Stories Philippines Podcast.
You know that feeling when you wake in the pitch dark, the air unnaturally still, and the silence sits heavy as though it could suffocate you? When every small sound becomes a conspiracy, and you are certain there is something in the house that should not be there? Perhaps it is the slow, intimate creak of a floorboard under a weight that was not there a moment ago. The faint, scraping scratch like nails along the underside of the floor. Or the way the shadows gathering in the closet seem to shift and breathe when you are not watching them. Some nights, the fear arrives for no clear reason and feels irrational, an overactive imagination stoking old anxieties. But what if, in some houses, in some rooms, that fear has a name? What if the monster you have always feared is not crouched beneath the bed, but waits behind the locked door across the hall? What if its appetite is not for strangers who wander in from the street, but for the people you love most, the ones who share your table and know your mother's voice? What does it mean when the evil is not prowling the lane outside, but rooted inside the family, inside the house itself, inside the very heart of what should be safest and most secure? There is a shadow that slinks beneath the stilted wooden houses of the archipelago, a darkness older than any family story, patient and persistent as tidewater. It moves softly through rafters and along salt-stiff beams, slipping between the weathered planks and settling into corners where light forgets to linger. In this episode, we will confront the kind of terror that lives close to your most ordinary hours, that assumes the faces of those you trust, that hides inside a box everyone pretends not to see, and that no one dares to open. Before we begin, I must warn you. Tonight's tale pries open the deepest, most splintered cracks of the home, revealing secrets that have been nailed shut and monsters that have learned the cadence of lullabies. The following story contains themes and scenes that may deeply unsettle you and linger long after the lights are switched back on. Please listen with care, and do not let the house think you have grown complacent. I am Jessica, and you're listening to Stories Philippines Podcast. This is Season 5, Episode 4, The Box That Never Opens, The Aswang in the Closet. If you have your own strange story or family secret, don't hesitate. Send it to our email at stories@phpodcast@gmail.com. We welcome every whispered memory and every uneasy recollection. Your submissions help keep these tales alive. You'll find support options and detailed show notes in the description. And you can unlock exclusive content through our Patreon for deeper dives, bonus episodes, and interviews. For daily folklore facts, behind-the-scenes snippets, and quick myth bites, follow us on social media and join the growing community that shares, debates, and interprets these old stories together. Let us begin. The Philippines is a land of open windows and locked boxes, a place where sunlight and shadow live side by side, and family histories are as layered as the thatch on a roof. In the old days, every home had a trunk or ball, filled with linens, wedding photos, or things too precious or terrible to leave in the open. Those trunks sat beneath beds or in the corner of the sala, their lids swollen with humidity, their brass hinges whispering in storms. Children were warned never to touch certain boxes, never to ask questions about them. The admonitions were delivered in hushed tones that carried the weight of generations. Sometimes these boxes hid shame, an old love letter, a pawned land title, a birth certificate that didn't match the family story. But some boxes, it was said, hid something hungry, something that listened when you breathed and remembered every slight. The Aswang is many things: a shapeshifter, a night stalker, a devourer of flesh and spirit. It wears the face of a neighbor and the gait of a mother, And in some versions, it walks as a woman, weaving rice stalks by day and tearing into villages by night. But what makes the Aswang most terrifying is not simply its fangs or claws, but its ability to slip into the crevices of home life. It is a monster that thrives in the domestic sphere, in the places where we are supposed to be safest, the kitchen where meals are prepared, the bedroom where infants sleep, the communal spaces where trust is assumed. It turns everyday rituals into a theater of suspicion. In cities and barrios alike, the Aswang's legend lingers in every squeaky closet door, every unexplained illness, every sudden rift between loved ones. Old women stitch talismans into baby blankets. Neighbors trade warnings over fences, and midwives keep a wary eye for marks on a mother's neck. In the village of Dumalag, Capiz, stories are told of wives who would rise in the night, their feet barely touching the bamboo slats, to slip out into the moonlight. Husbands who locked their bedroom doors not to keep out thieves, but to keep in something far more dangerous. Fingers, perhaps, that could bend in impossible ways, or mouths that hummed lullabies with the wrong notes. There are tales of lanterns snuffed without wind, of dogs howling toward an empty road, and of children who return from play muttering of strangers who looked exactly like Aunt Maria, but whose eyes held no memory. One such story, circulated for decades, whispered from mother to daughter, tells of a woman named Liza. She was a quiet wife, devoted and habitually the last to eat at the family table. She kept a small wooden box tucked discreetly in the corner of the bedroom. The children were strictly forbidden to touch it, and her husband, Tomas, respected her privacy without question. But as the years passed, strange and unsettling things began to happen in the house. The family cat vanished without explanation. The baby fell ill with a wasting fever that resisted every remedy. Tomas awoke repeatedly at night to the sound of wings beating and scraping against the roof. He tried to ignore that creeping dread, but it only festered and grew more oppressive. One night, curiosity finally consumed him. He pried the box open. Inside, he found not jewelry or letters, but clumps of hair, fragments of old bones, and a dried, blackened heart. Liza stood in the doorway, her face expressionless and cold. "Some boxes," she said softly, "must never be opened." Tomas never spoke of what he had seen. Yet from that night on, he bolted his own bedroom door and shut his heart against his wife. The family never recovered their former warmth or trust. Tales like Liza's are far from isolated curiosities. In truth, Filipino folklore is rich with stories of the Aswang hiding in plain sight, woven into the fabric of everyday domestic life. The Aswang is not merely a monster of the night. It is a creeping terror that seeps into every argument, every suspicion, every unexplained bruise or missing chicken, and every sudden coldness between spouses who once loved each other. It occupies the gap between neighbors' gossip and private dread, turning ordinary domestic tensions into mythic horror. Some cultural observers argue that the Aswang's particular intimacy with the home springs from deeper social fears, of infidelity, of sudden illness, of grinding poverty, and of the secrets that fester in households under pressure. In a society where family ties are paramount, the idea that danger might originate from within the household is especially potent and resonant. The Aswang, in such readings, becomes a physical and terrifying embodiment of those deep-seated familial anxieties, a monstrous figure that gives shape to otherwise diffuse fears about trust, survival, and the precariousness of everyday life. International parallels abound. Consider the pervasive myths of the vampire in Eastern Europe, a creature once widely believed to arise from within the domestic circle and to turn first upon its own kin before menacing outsiders. In Japan, the Yama-uba, or mountain crone, was feared not because she preyed on passing strangers, but because, in times of famine and desperation, she might prey upon her own children. In the Philippines, the Aswang occupies a more ambiguous cultural position, feared simultaneously as a sinister outsider and as a treacherous insider. Across these traditions, the figure embodies a collapse of trust and a fatal contamination of the sacred home space, turning shelter into threat and undermining the basic assumption that the household is a refuge from the dangers of the world. A documented account recounts a chilling episode from Cavite involving two sisters who shared a single room and a bed. One night, the elder sibling, Ella, became aware that her younger sister, May, was sleepwalking and moving toward the closet at the far end of the room. May stood before the closed door and began whispering, as if to something unseen inside, her lips forming words that sounded like a private conversation with an invisible presence. When Ella called her name, May turned slowly with unfocused, glassy eyes and replied in a voice that seemed thin and distant. "Mama says not to open the box." The following morning, the closet door was found ajar. The family dog was missing without a trace, and muddy footprints trailed across the floor toward the back of the house. The household, unnerved by the sequence of events and the sense of a presence that had invaded their home, relocated shortly after. When new tenants later inspected the room, they discovered deep, deliberate claw marks gouged into the baseboard beside the same closet. Marks that suggested something had tried to force its way out or had been restrained there. Taken together, the unsettling details imply that the malign presence was not introduced from outside, but lay in wait within the house itself, an abiding, patient darkness that slowly transformed the familiar into something dangerous and untrustworthy. The Aswang is not always so literal. Sometimes it is a metaphor for the things that eat away at a family from within. A father, driven to drink by job loss, becomes a hollow-eyed stranger who frightens his children and erodes the sense of safety in the household. A mother, exhausted by debt or betrayal, lashes out with words that wound deeper than any fang, leaving scars that linger long after apologies have been made. Secrets multiply in the darkness, passed down like a contagion from one anxious night to the next. Grudges fester in quiet corners. Small slights accumulate into a heavy, unspoken weight. The box remains closed, but everyone knows it is there, a mute emblem of what the family refuses to face. This pattern of internal decay has echoes in many global cultures, where the monster becomes the mirror of a society's hidden corruption and private shame. In the Visayas, grandparents tell of the Aswang's ability to hide in the silong, the low crawlspace beneath the house. Children are warned never to play there, lest they disturb a monster who will wait patiently for the right moment to strike and pull them into the dark. Sometimes, the Aswang is said to crawl through cracks in the floor or peer through the slats in the closet door, waiting for a moment of weakness when a lamp is left unattended or a child wanders too close. The very structure of the traditional Filipino home, built on stilts and designed for airflow, provides a hidden, accessible underbelly for a lurking terror that can watch and move unseen. A chilling listener-submitted story recounts a family in Iloilo who, after a series of unexplained illnesses and livestock deaths, finally discovered a nest of Aswang talismans hidden in the rafters above the master bedroom. The objects were wrapped in soiled cloth, bones, feathers, dried herbs, and a lock of hair, arranged with a care that hinted at intent rather than random superstition. The family matriarch, once beloved for her gentle manner, became withdrawn and cold, her laughter thinning into silence. When questioned, she claimed no knowledge of the items, but the children remembered the late-night whispers, the strange noises under the floor, the way their mother's shadow seemed to slip away at moonrise. Neighbors noted, too, how the woman began walking with a small, distracted smile, as if listening to a private voice. Whether the talismans were the cause or a symptom, the household's life was altered. The home no longer felt whole, and the presence of something unseen hung over them like a persistent fog. This narrative of a beloved family member concealing a secret evil finds an interesting counterpart in the historical paranoia of witchcraft in Europe, where the most devout neighbor could be suddenly accused of the darkest betrayal. The fear is always the same: the contamination of the holy space, the idea that the sanctity of hearth and heart can be violated from within by someone trusted and familiar. In modern times, the aswang is often explained away by science: a rat in the walls scratching at night, a case of sleep paralysis that steals the breath and fills the room with impossible shapes, a family member suffering from mental illness or the slow, disorienting erosion of dementia. Yet the stories persist, tenacious and generative, because they speak to a deeper, more stubborn truth: the terror of not knowing who or what we live with. The fear that the people closest to us may harbor a darkness we cannot see, a hunger we cannot satisfy or understand, a private life that eats at the shared life until it is hollowed out. The aswang is not just a creature of the provinces and remote barangays. In Manila, in the cramped apartments, the narrow stairwells, and subdivided houses that multiply like cells, the legend adapts and migrates. It finds new textures in fluorescent-lit corridors and behind vinyl curtains. A story from a city suburb describes a couple whose marriage began to unravel after the birth of their first child. The wife grew suspicious, convinced her husband was having an affair. He, in turn, began to suspect her of something far worse. Night after night, he heard the sound of flapping wings beyond the thin walls, the faintest scratching at the window that set his nerves raw. He installed locks on every door, bolted cupboards, and chained the gate. But the sense of danger only grew, intimate and suffocating. One evening, in a fit of desperate obsession, he followed her into the kitchen and found her standing motionless in front of the refrigerator, her face pale and her eyes fixed on something he could not see. In her hand, she clutched a small, ancient key, the key to a box he had never been allowed to open, a relic she had guarded with a mixture of superstition and stubborn privacy. He never asked what was inside. He could not bring himself to demand the truth, and she would not offer it. The silence that settled between them, the careful avoidance of the subject, became the monster's best defense, a cocoon of secrecy in which suspicion festered and grew until it devoured their marriage from the inside. Find show notes and support options in the description, the narrator might add, as if practicalities could meet the ache of such stories. The aswang, in all its mutable forms, is a mirror to the anxieties that haunt Filipino homes: the fear of betrayal by those we love, the agony of suspicion that poisons ordinary kindness, the grief of inexplicable loss. It is the hunger that is never sated and that grows louder in the dark, the secret that is never told, folded into daily routines like a dangerous heirloom, the box that is never opened because opening it would demand a reckoning none are prepared to face. The investigator, a man named Elias Vance, had made a career of prying open such boxes, both literal and metaphorical. He was a debunker by trade, a man who believed that every ghost had a rational explanation, every haunting a human cause. Yet, the longer he spent in this suffocating rural home, the more his skepticism began to crumble. The air, thick with the smell of decay and a cloying, metallic tang he couldn't quite place, felt heavy with a silence that was not peaceful but waiting. He spent the day in quiet observation, noting the way the family members moved around the nailed-shut closet in the eldest daughter's bedroom. They gave it a wide berth, their eyes skittering away from it as if the very sight of it was a physical blow. The daughter, a pale, hollow-eyed girl named Alara, seemed to be the epicenter of the house's oppressive atmosphere. She moved like a sleepwalker, her gaze distant and unfocused, and she never, ever spoke. That night, the guttural growling from behind the closet door was louder, more insistent. It was a sound of profound animal distress and rage, but underneath it, Elias detected something else. A chillingly human cadence of pain. It sounded like a word, a name, being choked out between snarls. He pressed his ear to the wood, the crude protective markings scratching against his cheek, and felt a vibration, a rhythmic thudding from within, like a heavy body being thrown against the door. The next morning, the family's denial was more frantic. "The wind," the father blustered, his face a mask of forced joviality. "This old house groans and complains like an old man." The mother, her hands trembling as she served breakfast, offered a weak, "It's the pipes." But their eyes, wide with a shared secret terror, told a different story. Elias, however, was no longer looking at them. His attention was fixed on Alara. A fresh, angry scratch ran down her arm, and a dark, viscous substance that looked disturbingly like dried blood was caked under her fingernails. When she met his gaze, for a fleeting moment, the vacant look in her eyes was replaced by a flash of desperate, pleading intelligence. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. That afternoon, under the pretense of checking the foundation, Elias explored the woods surrounding the house. He found a small, dilapidated shed, its door hanging ajar. Inside, the smell of decay was overpowering. On the dirt floor, he found a scattering of small animal bones, picked clean, and a series of deep, gouging scratches on the wooden walls, identical to the ones on the closet door. In the center of the room was a small, crudely made doll, fashioned from twigs and human hair. Its button eyes seemed to watch him with a malevolent glee. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, forming a picture far more disturbing than any ghost story. The symbols on the door were not for protection, they were for containment. The growling was not a haunting, it was a prison. And the family were not victims, they were wardens. That night, Elias did not wait for the growling to start. Armed with a crowbar he'd found in the shed, he stood before the closet door, the family's frantic protests a meaningless buzz in his ears. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that to leave this box closed was to condemn someone to a fate worse than death. The risk of what lay inside was a gamble he had to take. With a wrenching shriek of tortured metal, the nails came free. The door swung open into the darkness, and a wave of stench and a blast of cold air washed over him. From the depths of the closet, two luminous, feral eyes blinked open, and a voice, no longer a growl but a clear human whisper, said, "Free." Stories like these find parallels in how societies and the families within them process collective trauma. Scholars and folklorists suggest that tales of the Aswang in the house are not merely ghost stories but intricate psychological maps for navigating the unnavigable. They are ways of coping with the deep, festering wounds of domestic abuse, the quiet poison of infidelity, or the terrifying unpredictability of mental illness. When a father's anger becomes monstrous, when a mother's sadness consumes the light in every room, or when a child's behavior becomes alien and frightening, it is often easier to invent a monster. The Aswang becomes the scapegoat, a tangible entity to blame for a pain that is too intimate, too complex, and too shameful to face directly. By caging the monster, a family can create the illusion of control, performing a ritual of containment that they cannot perform on the real, far more complicated source of their suffering. But the legend also serves as a stark and visceral warning. Keep your secrets locked away. Starve them of light and truth, and they will not die. They will mutate, they will fester, and eventually, they will grow teeth. In certain faith traditions, particularly within the deeply spiritual context of the Philippines, the Aswang is more than a monster. It is a spiritual test, a sign of a deeper imbalance. The home is a microcosm of the sacred, a sanctuary that must be actively maintained through faith and harmony. To allow such a profound darkness to take root inside is to fail a fundamental duty. Thus, the response is often steeped in ritual. Families bless their homes, meticulously sprinkling holy water in every corner, from the threshold to the bedroom. They hang braids of garlic and place talismans of salt and charcoal above the doors. ancient practices meant to ward off malevolent forces. Yet the wisest practitioners understand that these are merely physical manifestations of a spiritual need. In some towns, the priest is called not to exorcise a demon with bell, book, and candle, but to heal a marriage with counseling, to mend a fractured parent-child relationship with mediated conversation. They recognize that the spiritual and the emotional are inextricably intertwined, and that a monster often finds its easiest entry point through a heart broken by discord. This nuanced understanding, blending theology with a folk psychology, is a subject often explored in greater depth, with some creators even turning to platforms like Patreon to share exclusive content and theological deep dives into the rich tapestry of Filipino folklore. Yet, for all the analysis and all the rituals, the Aswang's power endures, because it is endlessly adaptable. It is not a creature of fixed form or singular purpose. It is a reflection, a dark mirror held up to our own deepest anxieties. In an age of financial instability, it is the fear of destitution that gnaws at the foundation of the home. In a time of political division, it is the neighbor whose once friendly face now seems like a mask. The Aswang is the nagging suspicion, the corrosive doubt, the secret shame. It is the monster that becomes whatever we most fear, whatever we most vehemently deny within ourselves and our homes. It is a chameleon that hides in the plainest sight, disguised as a loved one's silence or an unspoken tension that hangs heavy in the air. And so, the box remains. Whether it is a literal nail-studded closet in a rural home, or the metaphorical container in our hearts where we lock away our pain and our secrets, it is there. We may ignore it, we may build our lives around it, we may even forget it is there for a time, but we can always hear the scratching from within. The secret is never truly silent. It is waiting, and it is hungry. Another listener's story, sent in from a quiet, rain-swept town in Batangas, tells of a boy named Carlo. Carlo grew up in a home that was a museum of silences. It was a home where every argument, every disagreement ended not in resolution, but in an abrupt and heavy stillness, a quiet so profound it felt louder than shouting. Every locked door, and there were many, hid another layer of unspoken resentment, another secret carefully embalmed and put away. One sweltering night, the power failed, plunging the house into a thick, velvety darkness. It was in that oppressive quiet that Carlo first heard it. A furtive movement from the tall Nara closet at the end of the hall, the one his father had sealed shut years ago for reasons no one ever explained. At first, he dismissed it as a rat, its claws skittering on old wood. But as he lay there, holding his breath, the sound grew more deliberate, more rhythmic. It wasn't the mindless scramble of a rodent. It was the sound of a fingernail, slowly, carefully, tracing shapes on the inside of the door. The scratching resolved itself into a whisper, a dry, sibilant hiss that seemed to seep through the wood itself. "Let me out." The voice was a horrifying parody of his father's, twisted and strained, as if spoken through a throat full of sand. When the lights flickered back on an hour later, a profound and unnatural silence had fallen over the house. The scratching had stopped. The closet stood as it always had, impassive and sealed. But the next morning, his father was gone. His shoes were by the door, his keys on the table, but the man himself had vanished. His mother, her face a pale, brittle mask, refused to speak of it. When Carlo, his voice trembling, asked about the noise, she simply turned away and began to methodically clean the already spotless kitchen, her movements stiff and robotic. The town, ever hungry for tragedy, whispered its own stories. Some said he'd run off with another woman. Others spoke of gambling debts and shadowy figures come to collect. But Carlo knew. He knew that something in that closet had called, and his father, for some unknowable reason, had answered. The terror of the aswang in the closet for Carlo was not just the primal fear of being eaten, but the chilling adult fear of abandonment, of being left alone with the monsters we cannot name and the silences we cannot break. For more daily folklore facts and listener stories like Carlo's, follow us on all our social media platforms. The aswang in the closet is a concept as real and as tangible as the secrets we choose to keep, as the pain we steadfastly deny, and as the fierce, desperate love we fear to lose. It is the monster that waits, endlessly patient and ravenously hungry, for that unguarded moment when the family's carefully constructed facade begins to crack, when the locks finally fail and the whispers, once contained, begin to seep into the air like a slow poison. Tonight, as you go through the familiar ritual of locking your doors and checking your closets, allow your mind to wander. Remember that some boxes, some memories, some truths are never meant to be opened. Their contents are too corrosive, their darkness too absolute. But remember, too, that some boxes must be opened, for within them lies not a monster, but a key, the key to our own freedom. Pause just for a moment and ask yourself, what secrets does your own home keep? What unspoken truths linger in the corners of rooms, behind the carefully locked doors of memory, inside the dusty, untouched boxes in the attic of your heart? What darkness waits, not with malice, but with a sorrowful patience, just to be acknowledged? And if you found it, if you stood before that sealed container, would you dare to look inside? As you ponder this, listen for the echo of old wisdom, a truth passed down through generations of storytellers. The monsters we imagine waiting for us outside are never as dangerous or as powerful as the monsters we nurture within. If you are with us tonight, if our stories have stirred something within you, don't let it fade into the darkness. Send your own encounters, your family legends, your unexplained experiences to storiesphpodcast@gmail.com. Every story shared is another light against the shadows. For a deeper dive into the world we explore, check the description for comprehensive show notes, links to our research, and various support options. And for those who wish to journey even further with us, discover a treasure trove of exclusive content on our Patreon, where we unravel the tangled threads of history, psychology, and folklore that weave our tales together. A final thought, a parting whisper for the road ahead. What is hidden in darkness, what is starved of light and air, will one day inevitably ask to be seen. The bravest thing we can ever do is not to fight the monster, but simply to open the box. Keep questioning the shadows, keep searching for the light, and above all, keep listening. The answers are always there, waiting in the stories. For more tales of the strange and the uncanny, we invite you to explore our library of past and future episodes. Do not forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share this podcast with a friend who appreciates the darkness. Your support in all its forms is the lifeblood of our work, and you can find all the ways to help in the show notes. Thank you for letting my voice into your home, into your space tonight. Until we meet again, keep your lights on, your mind open, and your closets respectfully closed. Goodbye, and thank you for tuning in.